Hi, welcome to my review of Prometheus, the new film by Ridley Scott. Prometheus is Ridley Scott's first foray back into the sci-fi world since his film Blade Runner. And for a long time this film was speculated as being, is it or is it not a prequel to Alien and that whole franchise. And it turns out that it takes place in the same universe, so it kind of is a prequel, but in the same sense, it really is its own film. It's kind of a new mythology. And I'll just start off by, giving a brief synopsis of the film and then kind of my overall thoughts on it. Now, having not seen Alien or any of those other movies, I went into this film not knowing much about this whole universe at all. I pretty much went in with a blank slate, only having seen the trailers. And so throughout most of the movie, I was actually a little bit lost, to be honest. But as soon as I started getting more and picking things up, and then by the end I was fine. But just I was a little bit lost in the whole pretty much first half of the film. So the basic setup of the film is that there's these scientists that all go on this expedition to a planet because their thesis supports the idea that we were engineered by some other being. Just based off these cave paintings that they found and a few other things, they basically have set off to this world to try to figure out where mankind came from. And so that's the basic premise of the movie right there. Then it jumps off once we get onto the planet. Pretty much from that point on becomes a survival film, because as they're exploring and as they're looking, they're running into these indigenous creatures that are pretty dangerous, and eventually it just becomes, like I said, a survival film. So let me first start off by what I really liked about the film. What I really liked about this film was the visuals. The visuals are this film's triumph. Just looking at this is amazing what Ridley Scott was able to do. I saw this in IMAX, and it was amazing to see just this entire world come to life. I really felt like I was someplace else. And there wasn't really a lot of CGI used. It was a lot of great sets, especially the interior of the spaceship Prometheus, as well as the planet that they're on. Most of the CG takes place when the ship is in space and when it's taking off, and also a lot of the holograms are CG. But other than that, there's a lot of practical sets built, which was the same for Blade Runner. A lot of it was previously built. And Ridley Scott there was a famous saying by one of the people working under Ridley Scott in Blade Runner. He said that if you can build it, build it, because it definitely adds just the realism, and it adds something, and it definitely helps the actors as well, because they have something tangent to work off of, not just a green screen. So I applaud him for keeping the CGI to a minimum, but then using it to enhance the story, because that's when visual effects work the best, is when they're enhancing the story and they're not overshadowing the story. And another thing I really enjoyed was the acting in this film was pretty much top-notch all around the board. The actors all brought their A game. Ridley Scott is known as an actor's director, so you expect that most actors are going to bring their A game, and most of them actually did. Especially Michael Fassbender. He's one of the best up-and-coming actors in Hollywood, I believe. He plays an android named David, who looks just like a human. He has the same physical mannerisms as a human, but he's not. He's an android. And he gives the best performance in the film. His character is definitely the most interesting. There's some characters in this movie that are a little bit just flat out boring. They're just not developed. And honestly, we just don't care about them at all because they're not developed very well. For example, one of the characters, he's barely developed at all, and then he dies in the middle of the film, and I couldn't feel any emotional connection to that death because he wasn't developed enough, and because he wasn't just given enough reason to care about him, really. Well, he was one of the geologists that I mentioned before. And then I also really liked the suspense that Ridley Scott is able to hold in this film. There's really not a lot of action in this film at all. It's mostly just suspense and, yeah, like I said, suspense and terror and a lot of freaky, gross images that come up quite a bit. It's definitely not a movie for the faint of heart, because there's a lot of like gut-wrenching scenes where you're just like, you're in your seat and you're kind of squirming and you're just like, oh man, why did he show that? But at the same time, it's really cool what he did. And other thing I really liked about the film was it moved at a really good pace. It was only 2 hours and 5 minutes long. I felt like it could have been even longer because it felt like at parts there were certain things that were just flat out missing, certain scenes that we could have used here and there that would have helped the story make more sense, would have given some characters more time to develop. Uh, so that would have been useful. It'll probably be in a director's cut because Ridley Scott is basically the father of director cuts, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see one for this film. One of the other things that I really liked about the film was just the way it asks big questions, but it doesn't answer those questions. Kind of leaves it open for interpretation, allows you to make your own conclusions. That can be a gift, but it can also be quite frustrating because some people like that fed to them. I personally don't, but a lot of people were like, I just don't understand why it asks these questions but then doesn't propose any answers. Well, I don't think he was going for that. I really don't think he wanted to give any answers for a lot of things that were asked in this film. Like, for example, where we came from, what the purpose of life is, you know, what is people's relationship with their creators? Same as what's this relationship with David the android and the humans who created him? It's kind of paralleled there. But now one of the things I didn't really like about the film, the script was kind of weak at times. I felt like it really was just lacking, and some of the dialogue felt a little contrived. It could have definitely been touched up in some areas. Ridley Scott, the problem when you have a good director who doesn't write his movies, it all comes down to the script. Because you can be the best visual director. You could be a David Fincher, you could be a Ridley Scott, you can be a Tim Burton. It doesn't matter because you have to have a script. You have to have a reason for people to listen and invest in the characters. If you don't have that, the film doesn't work. This is what happened. This is what has happened with Tim Burton pretty much over the last decade. He's had these films where he's such a great visual director, but if he doesn't have a good script, it doesn't work. And that's exactly what happened with Ridley Scott in Robin Hood, Body of Lies, in A Good Year, a few other films this last decade pretty much have been really just weak Ridley Scott attempts because he doesn't have the script. And if I was him, I would focus all my attention on that because he does focus a lot of his attention on the visuals and the architecture of the film, everything, the palette, everything else, but he also just needs to work on the script. Now, he's not a writer, so I get that, but it would be nice. That's all I'm saying. Is if the script would have been a little bit just tighter, would have just developed some characters a little bit more, especially because at the end, some characters make these decisions and we're like, it came out of left field, the decision. It's like, where did that come from? I don't understand how that character got from point A to point D because B and C are just not there. Those scenes are not there. That's why I feel like there might be a director's cut because some things are just missing. I understand he wanted to keep the film a little shorter, a little bit tighter because it's a suspense film. It's not really necessarily an epic like his American Gangster films or Gladiator or, just go down the list. All of his films are over 2.5 hours long. Except this one. This one's definitely not. This one, Blade Runner and Alien, are not that long. So I wish it could have been a little bit longer. But I'll wait for the director's cut to see if there's any improvement there if he does choose to do one. But overall, I walked away from this film and I actually really enjoyed it. I felt like there was just some things missing here and there. I would have appreciated a better script, some better, I guess, cohesion between certain scenes of the film because it kind of jumps around a lot. That's why I feel like something is missing at points. But I want to stress that this film is definitely accessible for anybody that hasn't seen the Alien movies because I haven't seen them and I still managed to get what was going on. It took a little bit, but I figured it out eventually. So don't let that throw you off. Also, definitely, if you can't see it in IMAX 3D because it was really awesome, the 3D is the best 3D I've ever seen because it wasn't gimmicky. It just really was immersive. It just put you in the moment. It didn't jump out at you with like just gimmicky throwing things and other messed up stuff like that. It really just immersed you into the world. And I'm really looking forward if they do make a sequel because the film kind of ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger with two of the characters journeying someplace else off of the planet. So I'm really interested to see where they take this if they do choose to make, and if they can make another movie if it makes enough money. So that would be very interesting to see um, where how this continues. So overall, if I was rating this film, I would give it 4 out of 5 stars because I feel like I would definitely recommend it to anybody that is a Ridley Scott fan because Ridley Scott in sci-fi, you really can't go wrong. He's arguably one of the best sci-fi directors of his generation. He he just it's just amazing to watch most of his films because what he's able to do, what he's with the visuals, and what he's able to bring to what he's able to immerse ourselves in. We just can let our senses go when we're in a film of his. So and I'm not like an unabashed Ridley Scott fan. I definitely know his bad films. I can name plenty of them. So I'm not going into this just being like a huge Ridley Scott fanboy. I just feel like this was definitely an improvement over some of his previous films of this last decade. And it's definitely on par. I would put it up with Gladiator, American Gangster, Alien. I wouldn't put it up with Blade Runner. I don't think he can ever top Blade Runner with what he was able to do with that film. But this is definitely in his upper echelon of movies. So thanks for listening, and look forward to my next review, which will probably be The Dark Knight Rises, because I don't think I'm seeing anything else in theaters until then.